Yo guys, Superior David here. Murder at Castle Nathria has been out for, a few days now, and we're starting to see the inklings of a meta starting to form around this new expansion. So I thought now would be the perfect time to go over what I think are some of the best decks so far. Now, real fast, I just want to say craft any of these decks here at your own risk. The meta is moving very fast, and what's good today might not be good by tomorrow. On top of that, we're probably going to be getting a balance patch in like the next week and a half or so, depending on when you're watching this video. So be careful with crafting anything. You have been warned, and I guess with that, let's get into these decks. Okay, so first up, we've got the deck that's truly dictating the meta right now, and that is Imp Warlock. Basically, what makes Imp Warlock so strong is that it's able to just explode onto the board very fast within like the first few turns of the game. Yeah, sure, we've got like, really good one-drops, like, good old faithful Flame Imp here, but the new Flustered Librarian can just pack quite a wallop once you start getting imps on the board. And that's really what you want to do with this deck. You just want to flood the board with imps. We have like so many like cheap imps over here, but then we've also got just like, Fiendish Circle and Wicked Shipments to dump just a whole bunch of imps on the board really fast. And then we turn those imps into damage using the new Vile Library. Now this card has proven to be like absolutely busted. You can frequently like close out the game by like turns like 3, 4, 5 if you can like get this down on curve, or Yogg help your opponent if you get like 2 of these down, because you're able to just use both in the same turn and can just push just so much damage. If your opponent happens to deal with like this really aggressive early game push, that's totally fine because we're able to reload super fast with the other broken card, Impending Catastrophe. Now this card, well, I'll be shocked if it doesn't get nerfed, because it's basically like 2 mana, draw like a third of your deck if you can like combo it in with like a Wicked Shipment or like a Fiendish Circle. Now on top of this like really explosive early game and reload, we also have just like fantastic ways to just flood the board once we get pushed off, because we got like the Mischievous Imp, which is so easy to like play for its infused cost. And then of course, we've got like the Imp King Rafam, another great minion who is just good at just throwing dudes on the board so you can just keep the pressure up. Now overall, Imp Warlock is definitely proving to be quite a formidable deck on ladder because of how it could just explode onto the board and just be so unrelenting in its early game aggression. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily unbeatable. And this brings us to Skeleton Mage, which is sort of propping itself up as the deck that beats Imp Warlock, as well as just a bunch of other strategies in the game. Now this is an updated version of the list that Meaty used to hit rank 6 legend, and the idea behind Skeleton Mage is that you want to play some of your skeleton cards in the early game to sort of just slow down the game and get some chip damage in at your opponent. The new Nightcloak Sanctum has proven to be like just a really powerful tool for just gonking up the board and just slowing down your opponent. Really mean card in my opinion. But then the other skeleton cards like the Cold Case are really good for just getting you a little bit more sustain. And then I find the Deathborn to be just like overall very annoying for any board-based deck to deal with. And of course we've got Big Daddy Kel'Thuzad over here to just bring it all home as a nice little win condition. Now, even though this deck may be called Skeleton Mage, I feel like the bulk of the games I find myself leaning on Mage's very powerful hero power package. The Wildfires, the Reckless Apprentices, the Mordresh, and of course the Magister Dawngrasp. Now this little hero power package here is what I feel like really takes this deck to the next level, because while the skeletons are nice and again they do have some utility and value, the hero power package is what gives this deck just so much backbreaking inevitability. Being able to get the Dawngrasp down on 7 and then follow that up with like a Reckless Apprentice allows you to just like wipe out like a lot of boards in the game at the moment. And then on top of that, you upgrade your hero power so that you can do even more damage with it and just start putting your opponent on that clock really fast. Now, one more new card I want to highlight is the new Theotar the Mad Duke, which is a tech card that's been becoming very popular over the past couple days, and it's finding its way into like seemingly most decks at the moment. And for Skeleton Mage in particular, I think he's really important for helping you out in a matchup that I 100% know you will be encountering a ton of on ladder, and that is Denathrius Ramp Druid. And I got this particular list from Pheno, and I played it the other day and it felt really good. Now the idea behind this deck is that we want to create a whole bunch of tokens and then kill them off while we have Denathrius in hand, and then we play Denathrius ideally with the Brand Bronzebeard to just nuke our opponent for a bajillion damage. It's actually filthy how much damage you could do with this Druid deck. Now to get the infuse up on Denathrius, we've got some of the classical Druid token cards like the Flipper Friends and the Scale Vanixia, but also the new Topior the Shrubagazer. Now Topior can basically just be like another win condition in himself, because he basically allows you to develop like this overwhelming pressure with all of your nature spells. A really powerful card. Now I just want to highlight a couple of tech cards that I think are very important for this deck, with the first one being the Theotar the Mad Duke. I think Theotar is really good at just disrupting other strategies like I mentioned with Mage, but I think beyond that, it's really good if your opponent steals your Sire Denathrius, you have the ability to like steal it back. It's basically like a neutral Mindrender Elucia that only targets power gets a single card. So I basically described this card using Mindrender Lucia, so I think that just speaks to how annoying it could possibly be. But the other tech card that I found to be sort of funny is the Insatiable Devourer. This is a card that's really good at dealing with the other way that people can counter this deck, and that is Mutinous. So if your opponent like just happens to play Mutinous and eat your Sire Denathrius, fret not, because you can play the Insatiable Devourer to devour their Mutinous and get all those stats on the board. And I find that this puts a lot of pressure on your opponent, and you could do filthy things too, like play like the Earthen Scale, so they just gain a bajillion armor. Now, if you want to learn more about this deck, I will be uploading a video on it later today. So if you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell notification so you don't miss that video going up later today. But anyways, moving on to the next deck, we've got Control Shaman, and this is the list that I used to hit 96 Legend the other day. And Control Shaman low-key feels like it could secretly be one of the best decks in the game at the moment, just due to the sheer versatility and how it can win games. If you're going up against like all those pesky Imp Warlocks, fret not, because you could slow them down with like Sleep Breakers and then just lock them out of the game with Snowfall Guardians and just smork them down with big old Guardians. Or if you're going up against like slower decks like Skeleton Mage or Druid, you can just strip the win conditions out of their hand with a big old Mutinous. You can recur that Mutinous with like the Brilliant Macaw or Bolner or Brand and whatnot, just really filthy things. And in that same vein with Mutinous, we've also got the Theatar, which essentially sort of serves the same purpose as Mutinous in that, like, you know, you're trying to just pull your opponent's win condition from their hand. Now for inevitability, we have the Sire Denathrius. And even though we may not have as many token generators as like say Druid, we have the ability to recur Sire Denathrius's Battlecry with, you know, like Brilliant Macaws. Macaw copies the whole Battlecry over here, just not the lifesteal. But to like take things to the next level and make just stuff even more broken, we've got the Kael'thas Sinstrider, which is really good in this deck because Shaman just is able to generate just like a ton of cheap minions. And I find the really mean thing to do with Kael'thas, like of course besides like, you know, cheating out you know, an early Sire Denathrius with Kael'thas, the other really dirty thing to do is to try to cheat out Kael'thas and Glug in the same turn. Your opponent is basically stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if they clear off the Kael'thas, your Glug gets super huge. If they leave up the Glug, then you got Kael'thas on the board and you are going to just send them to the Shadow Realm the following turn. Shaman is just so well positioned at the moment just due to its sheer flexibility. And if you're not seeing like a lot of this deck at the moment, then I'm sure you're going to be seeing it like over like the next, you know, couple days, because it just feels good to have like agency in like every matchup. Now, rounding out this list of what I think are the best decks so far, we've got Naga Priest. And I don't know who hit rank 8 Legend with this. I think it was someone on Asia. The name was in Korean. But I think this deck is just very solid right now. Sure, you know, Mage has freeze effects and Shaman also has freeze effects and can sort of like sometimes like stall this deck out. But what makes this deck so powerful is the new legendary Pelagos. If your opponent cannot answer this Pelagos, like the turn it comes down, they are in for a bad time, because it's so easy to just snowball with this guy. He basically turns like every minion into a freaking monster. And to back up this Pelagos, we've got, you know, a couple other new cards like the Partner in Crime, which is a very powerful minion, because sure, you know, you could buff it and you can get like a double buff minion. That's pretty cool. But being able to just get 2 bodies on the board is really good for Priest, because all you need with Priest a lot of time is like that, just that 1 minion to stick. And then you could like, you know, get your Radiant Elemental down, play a bunch of, you know, Nagas and Wigs, and pop your opponent with like a, where are you? With the Bless, which is somewhere. There we go. There's the good old Bless. Then of course, I got to mention the Cathedral of Atonement. It's just another monster of a card. Priest has always been lacking in card draw. So yes, the card draw from this is really nice, but being able to just like buff a minion as soon as you play it down, like the good old Radiant Elemental again, is just really strong. While Priest, I feel like it does sort of have some weaknesses to decks that are popular in the meta right now, I think it's very strong solely because you could just scam so many games with Pelagos. And if you want to learn more about this deck, then I already have a video up on it that you can check out over here on the channel, which just shows you the scary potential of this archetype. So there you have it. These are what I think are the best decks in the game right now. And, you know, just to recap real fast, we've got the Imp Warlock, which is the deck that's truly driving the metagame in my opinion. And then that is kept in place by the Skeleton Mage, which, you know, is also just a solid deck in its own right, but it does very well against Imp Warlock. And then we've got the Denathrius Druid, which does well against Skeleton Mage, but does get, you know, bullied a bit by Imp Warlock. So you better watch out for those Imp Warlocks. And then, of course, bringing it on down to Control Shaman. It's basically just a really flexible, solid deck on ladder that can do well against against any of these 3 decks. And then to bring it all home here, we've got the Naga Priest, which is just really good at popping off early in the game and can just punish decks that have weak openings. But anyways, let me know down in the comments what you think of all these decks here, and let me know what you've been jamming the first few days of Murder in Castle Nathria. I feel like there's just so many fun strategies going around, and I'm really excited to see how the expansion unfolds over the next couple weeks, especially after we get some balance changes with some potential buffs for maybe Warrior. But anyways, guys, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and in the meantime, stay superior. I'll catch you on the next one. Later.